Kant and the Rights Theorist. Who is Immanuel Kant? Immanuel Kant was born on April 22, 1724 in Königsberg, Prussia, or what is now known as Kaliningrad, Russia. He was born into an artisan family of modest means. His father, George Kant, was a master harness maker, and his mother, Anna Regina Kant, was the daughter of a harness maker. He died on February 12, 1804 at the age of 80. Some of his works are Critic of Pure Reason, Critic of the Power of Judgment, and Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals. Goodwill. Kant claims that the only good without qualifications is the goodwill. He treats the goodwill as the highest good since its end will always be good. A will becomes good only when it is motivated by duty, so when we act for our duty, we exhibit the goodwill. An example is when a shopkeeper who gives the right change to his customers because it is good for returning business is acting in a morally wrong way. If he had acted out of moral duty, giving customers the right change because that is the right thing to do, then his action would be morally acceptable according to Kant. Categorical imperative. When a person is acting out of duty, it presumes that that person knows the categorical imperative. For Kant, moral commands are always categorical and not hypothetical. There are two formulas of categorical imperative. The first formula of the categorical imperative, it says, act only according to that maxim by which you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. What is a maxim? A maxim is a principle of action. It specifies the reason for which a person acts. Since the categorical imperative requires that the maxims upon which we act be capable of becoming universal laws, this is equivalent to the requirement that we act for reasons that are universally acceptable. And the second formula of the categorical imperative, also known as the formula of humanity, it says, act so as to treat people always as ends in themselves, never as mere means. The humanity formula is closely linked with the idea of respecting persons. Kant argues that human beings are ends themselves, which means that they have value that is intrinsic, absolute, incomparable, and objective. Kant argues that every human agent possesses this sort of ultimate value and gives it a special name, dignity. When Kant says that human beings are ends in themselves, he means that they have dignity, and the appropriate response to dignity is respect. The humanity formula of the categorical imperative prescribes then that we respect persons because they possess dignity. We do so by treating persons as ends in themselves, that is, treat them in ways that acknowledge their fundamental value or dignity. From the two formula, or the two determiners of moral imperative, the respect for person and the universalizability.
Categorical imperatives are universal laws, and ones we as rational beings must always follow. Okay, but how does Kant determine what our categorical imperatives are? Kant has three ways of formulating categorical imperatives. The first was playing upon the idea of universability. Kant states, act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. By this he means you should only act in a way whereby you would want everyone else in the world to act in the same way, and by that basis you should refrain from doing things that you would not want everyone else to do. I see. So Kant would argue that an act is permissible if you are willing for that action to be universalized. If you are not, then this cannot be moral law. If your actions would cause contradictions in your will when universalized, then these are actions that you should not do. Let's look at the example of lying. If you're in a situation where you're about to lie, ask yourself what would happen if everyone lied all the time, if lying was permissible for everyone in the world. Truth would become meaningless. No one could be trusted, it will result in chaos. No rational person would want this type of world. So we conclude that you should never lie. It now becomes our duty and we should always obey this no matter what.
Yes, I understand.
Or consider the person who walks to the park to look at the beautiful flowers. One day they may want to pick some flowers to take home. If they ask themselves, what if everyone who came to the park picked some flowers? Then there would be no more flowers left in the park and there would be no beautiful view. So picking flowers cannot be morally permissible. The second formulation of the categorical imperative is to treat humanity as an end in itself and never simply as a means. So for Kant, a rational or reasonable being should never be used by someone else to fulfill another end. Rather, they should be considered ends themselves. They should be treated as people. Let's consider the slave owner forcing many people to build a giant building. The building is the end and the people are being used as a means. They are being forced against their will to build. This would violate moral law, should not be permissible.
I agree.
And finally, the third formulation is known as the kingdom of ends. Kant imagined a hypothetical kingdom of perfect rational and moral beings. Kant urged all people to see themselves as a member or lawmaker of the kingdom of ends, and act as though your actions would be approved by this kingdom of rational beings.
I see.
So there you have the categorical imperative for moral law. Only act in a way that you will to be universal, never treat human beings as a means to an end, and always act as though you're a member of the kingdom of ends. For human beings to be acting through goodwill means they are following their duty of the categorical imperative, and all beings should follow this duty at all times and no matter what. If we all do that, we will eventually create a state of peace and harmony.
Very interesting theory. I can see a lot of positive reasons to adopt the Kantian ethics approach to morality. We do have clear-cut laws to follow, so it's straightforward to grasp and live by.
Exactly. It also applies to all humans, and all humans are treated equally as part of the categorical imperative.
Yes, but there are also some big...
So there are these two kinds of rights by Kant, the legal rights and the moral rights. Now let's discuss further. The first one is the moral rights, are rights that belong to any moral entities such as human beings and animals. What make them moral entities are the following features such as freedom, rationality, and sentience. First, human beings are the only beings that enjoy freedom. With freedom, every act they execute accompanies moral consequences becomes possible. Second, human beings are the only beings gifted with rationality. With rationality, everything they do comes with rational deliberation whether a certain course of action will lead to a desired result without regrets or undesired result with undesired consequence. Lastly, human beings are not only beings who are capable of experiencing pleasure and pain. Of course, humans can determine which action plan would yield more pleasure and pain and vice versa, like the utilitarian, and only human beings can give different dimensions of meanings to pleasure and pain. On the other hand, animals too are capable of experiencing pleasure and pain. On this ground, animals are qualified of becoming moral entity. And that is why everyone has a moral right to such treatment and everyone has the correlative duty to treat others with morality. And the other kind of rights by Kant is the legal rights. It refers to all rights one has by simply being a citizen of a particular country like the Philippines. If the Philippines is governed by all legalities stated in the 1987 Constitution, so all its citizens are governed by the same Constitution. Being a Filipino, one is entitled to all rights and privileges accorded by the Constitution. This entitlement is acquired either by birth or by choice. By birth means that one is born within a certain territory such as the Philippines. By choice means each Filipino has the option to stay as a citizen of the Republic or denounce it and embrace other citizenship. This happens to few Filipinos who have gone abroad to work and who have stayed there for a longer period of time, in countries that grant citizenship and permanent residency. It only shows that every person has the right to abandon their being Filipino, American, and altogether embrace with other citizenship called dual citizenships. That means we all have the right to choose our citizenship. And together, be united as one.